Hi, everybody. Welcome to our final index page. We have done a number of different files like this before. This is going to be the final one. And let me show you real quick what I should have started with for you, which is a template. So I have kind of a new version of the skeleton that I put in. One of the last things you should have done is you should have learned a little bit about the root pseudo element, or pseudo class rather, and then you should have learned about CSS variables. We are indeed going to use these in here. So when you change your colors, it's really, really nice because all you have to do is change them in one place up at the top as opposed to in any different place you have them. This, I think, is definitely something that is very, very new, as a matter of fact. This is only like a couple of years old. This came out while I was teaching web design. This is not something that we were able to do in the beginning. So this is very new, and I think it is going to be something that does very much more in the future because it really is the best way to do it. It's just so much easier. So anyway, I went and I declared some variables. When you change the colors, what you're going to do is you're going to be able to change the color up here in the top. It'll be super easy for you. You can add more if you want, totally up to you. But in the end, I just want some good colors. Some of the other things that I added in this particular skeleton for you is a comment in CSS. I don't think we've done a whole lot of these, but these are important. So whenever we write our new CSS, it's going to go right under this line right here. This comment is great. The other thing I did in preparation for a second version of web design here, a second level, is I put the responsive meta tag on here. Line number 60, basically what this does is it goes and it checks out how big the screen is, and it sets the initial scale. Like when you zoom in on different websites, it sets that to 100% essentially. So anyway, that's the couple of things I added on the bottom. Actually, all of the HTML you will need in this particular one. I figured that to be a little easier this way because this is going to be a lot of CSS. Also down here at the bottom, the very, very bottom, I added a spot where you would add JavaScript should you ever do that. We are not necessarily going to do that. Actually, we're definitely not going to do that now. So that's just there as a placeholder for later. So let me also show you in the beginning here what our page should look like when it's done. We are utilizing a Jumbotron, which is a large focal image. We are then using our Flexbox setup in multiple ways to create a really nice, organized looking page that I think is very easy to access our information at. In the end, the user experience, the UX, is absolutely the most critical, important thing that you do. If your website isn't usable, nobody's going to use it. So I think this is relatively good. It's not perfect, but for us, I think it'll work great. So I've organized it in different categories. We're going to have our 3-page skeletons that we've done. We've done 3 versions of the skeleton so far. We've done 4 of these basic HTML assignments. We've done 3 Flexbox assignments. And then we're going to include a spot for our first full website, a link to that as we get in there. And this is just going to be a placeholder, so when we are ready to do that, it's going to be easy. But this should be all the stuff that we need. I know this has been confusing because there's a lot of different files. However, I think we're set to go now. So this is what we're going to look like when we're done. What we have right now is something like this. So obviously we have some issues to work through. And obviously that is also the point of the CSS in the beginning. So let's go ahead and get started on our CSS. There will be some copying and pasting in. I know it's tough to watch me type and wait. I make a lot of typing mistakes, but hopefully this will make it easier. So we are going to start right here under our comment for our new CSS goes here. And we're going to do a couple of things to get our page started. Specifically, I do believe we're going to start with the Jumbotron stuff. To be honest with you, I wrote a lot of CSS, not sure where we start, but Jumbotron does look like the spot where we're going to be. So for our Jumbotron class, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the Jumbotron class information here. And this is what we are going to be looking for here. So we're going to set a specific height for our Jumbotron. And the positioning, that is something that's a little bit weird. I know we're talking about that in our first full website. Don't worry about it right now. Just know that this is how it has to work. We're hiding anything outside of our box because we don't want it to overlap anything else. And then we're just using a standard Flexbox setup to make sure everything goes to the middle as opposed to being in a weird spot. So after your Jumbotron stuff goes in, what you should have is something like this. And you can see that our content now is centered, and you can see where this definite spot on the page is going to be for our Jumbotron. It's going to take up about that much. So we have a definite start here. So now for our image here, we're going to do a couple of different things. First off, for our .jumbotron IMG tag, what we're going to do is the same stuff that we usually do, a width of 100%, a display of block, and those are the standard sort of things to make our image fit in our box. So after you do those two things, we have that. Now we haven't finished our Flexbox setup, so we still have our text right here. Don't worry, that will move in a moment. But now one thing you notice, I put this image in your HTML for you. This is a solid demonstration of an image, but it's also a good reason why we can use this new topic that we haven't talked about yet, which is the filter topic. So if you've ever done any graphic design like Photoshop and whatever, you know that you can put filters. Snapchat, you can put filters. A little different, I suppose, but whatever. In HTML and CSS, you have the option to put filters on. And in this particular one, is so we can make our stuff in front of the image a little bit more noticeable and the image a little less in our face. We're going to change the brightness down to 0.7. So as opposed to something like this, that's really bright, you'll notice that it's just a little bit darker, and it takes it so it'll make the text a little bit easier to read in front of that. Now, the other thing that we are going to do is we're going to change something called the blur. So what we did is we we have something that, again, could be potentially a little distracting in front here. So the cool thing about this filter property is that you 100% have the option to do multiple things. So, oops, I can spell. This is why I'm copying things in. So what we're going to do is we're going to set a blur of 5 pixels. And what we're going to do, and as you see it, you have this image that's super clear right now. And 5 pixels might be just a little too much, huh? So now you can see that this image is actually super blurry. Let's go ahead and just dial that back just a touch. 5 is a little too much. Let's see if we can take 4 pixels and see if that makes it better. And with some of these, as you get super experienced, not so much, huh? Let's go ahead and do 3. 3 is what I kind of used in the beginning here in my demo code. So let's just go with it. I probably did that for a reason, you think? And that's fine right there. It takes, and it makes it so you have this cool looking background, but it's not, the background in this image here is not going to be the focus. We don't want this to be the focus of what we're looking at. We want the text to be our focus. So our filters right here should absolutely help achieve that particular goal. So let's go ahead, go on and finish our Jumbotron setup. So we have, I do believe, just one more. Well, no, we actually have a couple. So we have for our Jumbotron inner, I'm going to give you this particular chunk right here, just because I think it'll be easier. The problem, of course, is when I give that, oops, make sure when you're writing your CSS, please, that it's aligned. So you have your beginning and your ending bracket aligned here, and then everything is just tabbed in once. It's so much cleaner and easier for me to read when I help you. So you have for your Jumbotron inner, this is the second part of our positioning. So the position of absolute is the thing that's going to take and move the text from the side to the middle, back where it should be. And then the other is just a little bit of formatting right here. And this should be absolutely what we need. So now I did make, I think, a slight mistake. Let's just take a quick look. And that is absolutely what we're looking for. We do have some more to do with the text in there, but we'll do that in just a second. So if you look real quickly up at the top, you notice I didn't use a CSS variable for that particular text color. We're going to change that so I can show you how to do that. So up in here, we have a light text, which actually, honestly, is white. So when you go and you do this, what you can do, as opposed to just a color of white, what we're going to do is we're going to use the variable. And when you use your variable, you have your 2 dashes, and then light text is what goes in here. Now, again, I'm using VS Code. You're probably using Caret. That's fine. It should work fine. It may or may not come up as like accepted because, like I said, this is a very new topic. But if you type it the way that you see it right here, it should work just fine. So let's just go double check that real quick as I say that to make sure I didn't screw up. And you see it's the same. It's just one of those things that I wanted to show you how the variable works. So let's go ahead and finish this off. I did use something that's a little bit newer as well for our Jumbotron inner. As opposed to going and applying padding in multiple different ways inside of our Jumbotron, what I did is I took and I used this selector for our CSS, which says inside of our Jumbotron inner, apply this to all elements. And I just set a margin and padding for all of the stuff inside of our Jumbotron inner like this. It is a shortcut, which is very handy, saves us lines of CSS. With that particular shortcut, you should see this. Subtly different, definitely a little bit better. Spacing out our elements is important. So the last part inside of our Jumbotron is just some basic text formatting right here. I don't know what that was, sorry. Inside of our Jumbotron here, we have our H1 and our paragraph. So we want to just apply some font size and the line height for our paragraph, and then that should take us to a spot that's good for our Jumbotron, which should be this. And that's a solid look right there. I think it looks nicer. Everything is appropriately sized, easier to read, and as opposed to establishing a hierarchy on the page, that Web Design 1 homepage and this text right here at the top is absolutely the first thing that you are going to look at because it is the focus of the page. So let's go ahead and continue. We definitely have some more to do here. This one is definitely a good amount of CSS. So the next issue, we have our Jumbotrons all set up. Now we have to actually set up our rows in our Flexbox so we have stuff that looks like something. So we're using a row setup like we have before. And inside here, what we're going to do, we're just going to put a little bit of comment. So our container is going to be a Flexbox setup for rows. Basically, we're going to establish our container as a Flexbox so we can use our rows and do the rows like we have before. I do believe this is something you should be somewhat familiar with here. So for our container, I'll type this one for you. So we're going to display that one as Flex. And we're going to use a shortcut property here. This is something, again, we're going to talk about in our first website for sure. But this Flex Flow is one of those things that is, again, a newer property. And people who write CSS all the time are looking for ways to make life easier, this is one of them. So as opposed to having to write 2 lines of CSS every time you want to do this, this now makes it so 1. So we're going to say that we're going to display these in columns, and we are not going to wrap them to a new line. So that way our rows will take up a row. So now let's go ahead for our Flex container. We're going to have a little bit of stuff I'm going to give you right here. So for our Flex container, again, we're going to display this Flex. We're going to use our Flex flow. This is going to be our rows. These are going to set up in rows, but we are actually going to wrap these inside. So if you take a look and see what we did here on our final version, the thing that we're doing, our Flex container is basically this dark grayish sort of situation here. And I have multiple Flex containers on the page. Every time I want to align our items in a nice little row like this, but if I have 4, like in this one here, we're going to wrap it to the next line. So that's why we're doing this particular one. That's why it is what it is that we are wrapping, and then we set a width of this stuff because this is our Flex container is actually inside of a Flexbox already for the container. So it has to be 100%. And then we're just going to line everything and do some general setup right there. So we have a section header as well. And you notice that I did not set our background here as a variable. That's kind of a one-off color that you're going to have to change. Sorry. So our section headers, what the section header is going to do is the same thing as the Flex. We could have probably done this a simpler way, but our section headers are going to be the thing that defines what it is exactly each section is. So we're going to set our width in our padding, all the standard stuff that we would do. And then the only difference is kind of this border bottom. I just want kind of an underline to go in there. So I don't think this is going to look very good yet. What we're going to do is I'm going to give you for our, I'm going to give you some, I'm just going to keep going with this. I'm going to give you some of our Flex item stuff. Now, one of the things that I did set up for this particular one is I made it, if we click back over, I made this so each one of these is clickable. And of course, it doesn't really go anywhere because I just put hashtag in. So I think people expect this. If you put your mouse over something, you can click it. This is the setup for that. Let's go ahead and continue. So for our Flex item and our Flex item A, this one worked out a little bit different because it is a link. This is, again, just some standard Flexbox stuff. A lot of it has to go in for A because everything's a link, and it's just a little bit weird. And I'm going to give you 3 more sections right here. I know this video is definitely not short, is it? But I'm going to give you these 3 sections. After these 3 sections that I give you right now, first off, make sure, if you're not listening to the video, of course, that you don't forget to, whoa, hello, sorry. Make sure that you don't forget to get our Flex item CSS in right here, because you can't forget these things. Now, for this, these 3 things are going to be the things that make it so we can actually go and we can double check our page. So we have to display the image thing as a block. That's going to be the specific line that makes it so our large placeholder images fit. And then as we hover over our items, this is going to be the thing where we set a background color so it actually looks kind of nice and it looks like it should. So after you have these 3 lines, I assume you're going to pause and put them in. After you have these 3 lines, what your page should look like is this. Pretty much a final version here with a couple of slight variations. But you should see everything is lined up as it should, We just need to edit the title and the descriptions to make it look a little bit better. But that's where that should take you right there. So let's finish this. I do believe we only have 2 sections left, which I will give you right now. And the purpose of these 2 sections, like I said, is that you have this thing that doesn't look really good. You can see the hover kind of working. That's nice. So the last 2 sections that you're going to have are going to be for the item heading and the item text. And these are just standard things to affect the way that it looks. After you have these 2 things that come onto the page, this should be your final version. This is what it should look like. And you see we don't have our item text and stuff. Now we have it much more final. That's what we're looking for. So this is our done index page. In class, I'm sure we're going to talk about how you go about submitting this and actually changing this. The things that you're going to do to make this happen are you have this A tag. Wait, this isn't a Jumbotron. Make sure you change your name and all that stuff. You have this A tag. You are going to include a link to each one of these things that I showed you on this page. You don't have to add anything or take anything out. All the HTML you need is there. You're just changing the hashtag here. You're going to change the image like we did before to make it a more appropriate image for that topic. And you're going to change the description, the description to tell me what it is this assignment was about and what we did. So that's our final index. Good luck. If you need help, as always, please let me know. I know this video was exceptionally long, but you should have plenty of time to do this. This is fundamentally the most important thing that we can do, because without this, I can't grade your work. So good luck. Let me know if you have questions, and I will see you for our next video in just a little bit.